Please be seated. Good afternoon. You can have a seat, thank you. You will continue to be known as Juror I-33, and the attorneys will have an opportunity, can you see me now?
Yes, I can.
The attorneys will have an opportunity to ask you questions about your juror questionnaire you filled out last Tuesday, and we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda. You may proceed.
Please report. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
As Judge Nelson explained to you, this part of the process, we're still trying to pick a jury, and this particular part of it is we're asking you questions about what you've seen in the media in terms of what you filled out in your questionnaire. So I'm going to develop that a little bit, ask you some questions to kind of get your memory going in terms of what you remember. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I read your questionnaire, and the other thing I wanted to make sure you understand is we've got your address and all that, and we're referring to you as Judge Nelson indicated as I-33 or sir. You mentioned that your brief knowledge and source of this from the local news, and that you have heard that Martin was killed in an altercation with Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. The local news, I gather, was that TV versus newspaper, or both?
A little of both.
Okay. And is there a particular channel or station that you listen to in terms of the TV?
No, sir, not really.
Just whatever's on that day?
That's right.
Okay. And then the newspaper, would that have been the Orlando Sentinel?
It would be.
Okay. And was that an old-fashioned hard copy, or was that online?
That would be the old-fashioned hard copy.
Getting it out, going out to the street, or almost the street, I guess, and getting it out of your driveway?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you recall, in terms of your exposure to this case by way of the media, was that at the very beginning? This happened back in February of last year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you kept up with the case as it has progressed from back in February to right now?
Not really.
Okay. If you can, describe to me in terms of, you became aware of the case at some point last year. And
Yes.
did you kind of lose interest in the case, or what was your progression of knowledge of the case or lack thereof?
I believe that I didn't really get bored with it at all, but I did feel compassion for both entities, and the more I heard, the less I wanted to hear.
Okay. And when you say compassion for both entities, you're talking about Mr. Zimmerman and also Trayvon
Certainly.
Martin, is that correct?
Certainly.
Okay. In terms of your knowledge of the case itself, in terms of facts, do you remember anything about what this involves other than what you've noted here? You stated he was killed in an altercation with Mr. Zimmerman. Do you remember where it occurred?
A condominium complex in Stanford.
Right. And if you don't know, it's perfectly all right to say you know. I'm just trying to get an idea of what you remember. You know, we're all exposed to a lot of stuff, and sometimes we remember certain things, sometimes we don't remember.
Yes.
Do you remember any more about the circumstances leading up to the death of Mr. Martin?
Not really, other than I know it happened at night.
Okay.
It's really about how they got in a
Okay.
fight.
A fight, okay. Do you remember what the fight was about? If it was a fight, as you make reference to it?
I have no idea.
Okay. Did you ever, by way of exposure to the news, recall any kind of photographs related to the case?
Oh, I've seen photographs,
Okay.
yes.
Tell me as best you can recall what the photographs were of.
I've seen a photograph of Mr. Martin and photograph of Mr. Zimmerman.
Okay. Do you recall the photographs of Mr. Martin, what he appeared to be like? Was it standing? Was it sitting? What kind of clothing he was wearing or anything?
Yes, I remember that the picture that I saw was of Mr. Martin in the most publicized way in a hooded sweatshirt, standing, I believe.
Okay. Any other photographs of Mr. Martin other than that one?
Not really.
And I'm not saying that there was, I'm just saying what you remember. How about Mrs. Zimmerman?
Yes, I've seen pictures of Mr. Zimmerman as well.
What do you recall of the pictures of Mr. Zimmerman being like?
I remember seeing just his face, and then I remember one time seeing him getting out of the police car at whatever police station he was at.
Okay. Anything else?
Not that I really remember, other than I did see a picture of him recently, as compared to when it all began.
Okay, and the recent picture, what did that, just a regular picture, or what did
Just
that
a
look
regular
like?
picture,
Okay,
probably a couple months ago.
okay. Do you recall the setting that it was, the picture of Mr. Zimmerman that you saw recently? Not where you were, but the setting, if there was one regarding Mr. Zimmerman?
Not exactly, no, sir.
The fact that you saw Mr. Martin in a hooded sweatshirt, did that cause you to form an opinion regarding one way or the other? Or-
No, sir.
Okay. And the photographs that you depicted, or you described, I'm sorry, regarding Mr. Zimmerman, did that force, or did you form impressions one way or the other regarding that?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other photographs related to the case that you can recall?
I don't believe so.
Okay. By my question, I don't mean to imply that there was or there wasn't. I'm just not allowed to feed you information and say, this doesn't apply, so I'm giving you a hypothetical. I'm not allowed to tell you, oh, there was a blue car there. You mean you didn't see it? And then ask you about it. Does that make sense?
I understand.
I'm trying to get from you what you know, and I'm trying to prod as best as I can. Do you recall any type of recordings, if there were any, related to this case?
I remember there's a 911 tape, but I don't believe I ever heard it.
Did you just hear commentary about it, or a mention that there was a 911 tape?
Mentioned that there was one.
Okay. Anything significant that you recall being said about that tape by any commentator or reporter?
Maybe you could ask that a different way.
Okay, anything you recall about the gist or the subject matter in the 911 tape, who was talking or what it involved?
I do remember that there was some screaming on it.
Okay. And did you say you had not yourself listened to the tape?
No.
Okay. And your source
Yes, I
of...
did say that. No, I haven't.
Okay, thank you. And your source of information or that there was screaming, is it just somebody commented that there was screaming on the tape?
Yes.
Okay. And the commentary or news report of somebody screaming on the tape, either that you read or saw on the news, did it elaborate any more if there was any significance to that? In other words, did they just say, there's a 911 tape, they're screaming, or did they just leave off that screaming? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask you?
Try it again.
Okay. It's hard to ask people when you're making sure that you're not giving them the answer. Do you understand?
Yes, sir, I understand.
Okay. My question is, you mentioned that you heard or read something about a 911 tape and it involved screaming. Did the article or the broadcast that you saw or read, did it say the screaming was by, did it tell you who it was and the significance of the screaming? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did hear at one time the actual screaming, and there was some controversy as to who was doing the screaming.
Okay. Did you come to any conclusions one way or the other as to who was doing the screaming?
No, sir.
Whether it was one person, two people, or whoever it was?
No, sir.
So you have not, I know your ultimate opinion is that you have not formed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of this defendant, correct?
That is correct.
My question is, did you form any impressions or opinions regarding the significance of the recording at all, or who did it, or the screaming at all?
I haven't formed an opinion about that.
You have?
I have not.
Oh, you have not, okay, thank you. Anything else you recall, any other recording, if there was, of any type related to this case?
Not that I remember.
Okay. How about any of the court proceedings? Do you recall any reporting about what was happening in court? Like rulings by the court, motions being filed, just regular court proceedings? Anything about that?
Court proceedings like right now?
Yeah,
Or from the very beginning?
From the very beginning. in
Oh,
terms of-
probably so. I don't
Okay.
remember any details.
Okay. You got the jury summons.
Yes, I did.
And that was probably 3, 4, 5 weeks ago? About?
Something like
Okay.
that, yes,
And
sir.
at some point when you came down here the first time, the judge ordered you not to talk about the case or not to read anything about it. Prior to coming down to court, and when you got the jury summons, so when you got that, did you kind of do any research to see what cases were out there? And maybe I would have more knowledge. Sometimes people, when they get the summons, they think they've got to become more knowledgeable about the case. Did you do any of that stuff?
No, sir, I will tell you that I did hear if you get a January 10th summons that it might be about this case.
Okay, sure.
But I...
June 10th, you meant, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Other than that...
okay. Have you discussed this case with friends or family?
Since the very beginning?
Yeah, since the very beginning.
Probably, yes.
Okay. Do you recall at this time what the discussions were about?
Just that it happened.
Okay. Any commentary about what was going on with the case other than somebody was shot?
Not really, other than, things that took place in the city of Sanford
Sure.
regarding this and that.
Right. What do you recall in terms of things that took place? What do you recall discussing about that or commentary about that with friends or family?
Mostly it was just commentary from the media regarding, the tragedy itself and the events that took place with the police department and things like that.
Did you feel that was slanted one way or the other, either in favor of Mr. Zimmerman or in favor of Trayvon Martin or anything?
No, I really don't
Okay.
have an opinion on that.
And did the people you were talking to regarding that, did they express an opinion about that?
Not that I remember.
Okay. In addition to the news, in terms of straight news, like a car was going down the street, then there's people commenting about the news, either in the newspaper or on TV. Would you agree with that? Have you heard commentary about the case, is what I'm saying?
Oh, I heard some.
Oh, yeah, okay. And do you recall who you would have heard it from?
You hear it everywhere.
Okay, all right.
Walking down the street,
Sure, okay. Did that sway you one way or the other?
No, sir.
Okay. The commentary that you would have been exposed to just from walking down the street or other, was that one-sided or was that from both sides? People either in favor of Mr. Zimmerman being prosecuted or people in favor of Mr. Zimmerman not being prosecuted or charged, et cetera?
I would say both ways.
Okay. And I gather in passing, did you ever express an opinion one way or the other about that? About, he should be prosecuted or he shouldn't, that
No,
kind
I
of stuff.
never.
Just even in passing, even though your ultimate decision is that you have not formed an opinion.
I don't think so.
Okay. How about with family? Any discussions with them in terms of what should happen regarding the death of Trayvon Martin?
Not on that exact thing, no, sir.
Okay. Anything related to anything about the case or the reaction in terms of the community, if there was reaction about this case?
Yes, I've discussed the reaction.
Okay, tell me a little
Listen to people
Sure.
discuss about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you live in this community, so you've been exposed to it. My question is, do you recall what opinions you expressed or what impressions you had as a result of these discussions?
I don't think I ever expressed an exact opinion either way about that end of it. I don't remember any opinion.
Yes, sir. How did you feel about it in terms of community's reaction to this case?
the community reaction, I think, went kind of both ways.
Okay.
I feel like there was a lot of overreaction possibly, but I'm not in, the direct seat there.
Sure.
But, there was some, I'll just call it heavy talk in both directions.
Do you believe in the, one of our basic rights in terms of free speech by anybody?
Certainly.
Okay. Did you think that the overreaction, if there was, by one side or the other, or both, did you feel that was contrary to their rights to free speech? In other words, did you think it was improper in any way?
I think free speech is pretty broad, and the rules are the rules, so to speak, that free speech is free speech. So I don't, whatever happened is just what happened. I don't think that anybody should be held back by what they say.
Sure. And that, I gather, would not influence you one way or the other in terms of taking sides in this case?
No.
Or did it? It did
No.
not, I'm assuming. Okay. I apologize if I already asked you this, but do you do any Facebook or any other social media type stuff?
No, I'm challenged in that respect.
I can relate to that. But how about other family or friends that may do that? Have they exposed you in any way in terms of telling you, like, oh, there's been commentary on Facebook about one side or the other?
No, I have a very small family, and none of us do that.
Okay. How about at work, any discussions about the case at all? Other than
Unfortunately, I'm currently not working.
Okay, sorry to hear that. The question that was in the questionnaire too talked about how long the trial will take and possibly being sequestered or not. Let me kind of broach that subject with you. That was question number 5 in the questionnaire, the second page of the questionnaire. And I think you stated that you did not have an insurmountable hardship, so I want to explore that a little bit with you. We realize that as citizens of this great country, we all give up certain rights, and what I mean by that in terms of serving as jurors, it's a hardship. It's not something that most people willingly volunteer to do, but we ask people to come and take time from their lives, and we realize it disrupts their lives at home and at work.
Yes, sir.
And that's the way our system works. We don't just pick jurors that are jurors there all the time. We ask people to be their lives be disrupted. In other words, we don't have professional jurors. And taking that into account, we have estimated both sides that this trial will take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So we realize it's a disruption for everybody, including especially the jurors. The court has also made a determination, Judge Nelson has made a determination because she wants to make sure that the verdict is based on what happens in the courtroom as opposed to the media being influencing jurors in one way or the other, that the jury will be sequestered. So your contact with family, et cetera, will be severely limited. The perimeters hasn't officially been set, but I can tell you you'll be sequestered.
Excuse me.
So in other words, you understand that that's what's going to occur. And I understand that you don't have an insurmountable hardship regarding that. Is that correct? I know it's an inconvenience, but is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Have a moment, Your Honor.
My name is Don West, one of the attorneys on behalf of Mr. Zimmerman. Good afternoon. Thanks for your patience in these proceedings. I know you've been here more than just today as well. This is Mark O'Mara and Robert Hirschhorn, Mr. O'Mara's co-counsel on the case. Mr. Hirschhorn's helping us at this point, and of course, George Zimmerman at the end. This phase of the jury selection is limited to the issue of publicity, knowledge from the media, basically the information that you bring into the courtroom with you in advance of hearing any evidence. Then there's another phase where more general questions might be asked, more personal information might be asked and such. And by personal, I mean just how you feel about certain issues, not personal information that would be released to the public that would be of any concern. So with that in mind, we're fairly limited today. So I just have a couple of areas to touch on, and I don't want to just ask the same questions over because I've tried to pay attention and make some notes. So just interested in how you feel and what you know. There's no right or wrong answers today. So the local news that you might watch from time to time, is that the big three stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox? I guess there's 4.
That would be correct.
And you get them through the local affiliates here?
Yes, sir.
Do you have,
I think so. Let me be honest and tell you that I'm not in control of the changer.
you know, we've heard that before.
I think I watch Fox News, but it may not be the local Fox affiliate.
Sure.
I'm not
Okay. So to the extent that you may have had some contact in the news with this case, it's likely through one of the local stations?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if at your home, if you have cable that includes Channel 13? That's the Bright House system. A lot of people.
I don't have cable. I got DirecTV. I do not know if it gets that channel or not.
I suspect not. I think that's the default station if you have cable, but you don't.
No, we don't.
And you
have
haven't
cable.
had that in the last year and a half?
No, sir.
As far as other news sources, do you sometimes watch some of the cable news networks, CNN, for example?
No.
Is your news then, from television anyway, pretty much limited by the local television stations?
Pretty much so, yes, sir.
Okay. I think you did mention that you are a subscriber to the Orlando Sentinel.
Yes, I am.
Is that part of your routine?
Most days, yes, sir.
A couple of comments. Well, actually, let me just look through here. I take it, though, that you're not active in any social media. What I mean, like Facebook.
Oh, no.
You don't communicate with family or friends or anybody in that medium.
No, I just learned how to email, though. That's as far as I've gotten.
Welcome to the 21st century.
I know, it's enlightening, trust me.
Have you been following the case closely enough to know about any decisions that the court has already made in the case or any decisions that are pending?
Not that I can think of.
Right. Have you ever met any of the attorneys connected with the case or been present somewhere where they may have spoken?
No, sir.
Do you remember any press conferences given by anyone connected with the case?
I have seen where people are getting interviewed on TV. Best I can remember is I was doing something else and might have caught a word or two, but that would be it.
Was there
Substance, I don't know.
anything said by anyone connected with the case, any attorney or family member or potential witness? Because, you know, some of the potential witnesses have been on TV. Anything that has caught your attention that sticks with you about the case?
Other than that, I've seen them. You know, I have to tell you, I don't remember what all was said, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to remember exactly what was said. I'm really looking just for, is there anything that was said that really resonated with you, really stuck with you that,
Not that I can think of.
okay? Do you remember ever talking about the case at church or any other social organization, club, anything you might
No, sir.
belong to? I know you mentioned at this point that you're not currently employed.
That's correct.
How long has that been?
It's been quite a while. I got injured in a car wreck, and I'm a hands-on contractor and project manager, and I haven't really been able to do anything
So part
along
of-
those lines.
Part of it is the physical recovery aspect of it?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you've heard at least part of a recording that contains some screams in the background.
Yes, sir.
And you made the comment that you've heard a little about the controversy surrounding that.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by controversy?
I mean that I think they were wondering who was actually doing the screaming.
Mhm. Are you aware of anything connected with that? Any efforts to figure out who was doing the screaming?
I really don't know. I think they were trying to figure out who was doing the screaming. That's about all I know.
Just the idea that there's been an interest in figuring out who was doing the screaming if possible.
I think that's what it might be.
Mhm. I take it that you have not formed any opinion yourself that you know who was screaming.
No, sir, I don't have a clue.
Mhm. Sorry, I said I would be jumping around a little bit so we don't
It's all
take
right.
too long. It's been a long day already and such. You had mentioned about a community reaction to the case early on,
Mhm.
and that you're familiar with that, and your recollection is that there was some, you called it, I think, heavy talking on both sides. Is that your impression of it?
Yeah, I know there was some, some problems that caused the police chief to vacate his job. And that's pretty much all I really know about it.
Has that caused you to form any opinion about whether the police did a good job or not in this case?
I don't think I'm formed an opinion. I don't really know what happened as far as why he lost his job exactly.
Let me check. It's just a moment. Bear with us. Almost done. Thank you. Just question or two about what any conversations you may have had with others, like neighbors or former co-workers, about the case. I know most people have an opinion of some sort on the stuff they read in the newspaper or hear on the news. Has anybody been expressing their opinions to you, how they feel about the case?
Oh yeah, I've heard a few. Yes, sir.
Is that neighbors or friends?
Let's just say acquaintances. I live in the middle of nowhere, so I really don't have any neighbors, but I see people from time to time, and I've heard comments and opinions from going down both sides of the fence.
In other words, both sides, meaning some that may have offered an opinion in support of the prosecution or in support of the idea of self-defense.
Yes, sir.
As a result of that, have you formed any fixed opinions yourselves? Or are you able to, if you're on the jury, would you be able to decide the case based just on what you hear in the courtroom?
Yes, I don't think that I've listened to it enough or really had enough facts to form an opinion, probably.
To some extent, does it go in one ear and out the other when you're hearing this kind of stuff out there among your...
It sort of does. Since we got over here and been told not to discuss it, I've had to tell people that please, don't say any more. If I'm home and the TV's on, everybody knows to turn the channel if something comes up, that kind of thing. So it's tough not to hear something, but I have not formed an opinion on what anybody said or what I've read.
You consider yourself to have an open mind, and that anything that you might have heard outside the courtroom that could differ from something you hear in the courtroom, that you would only rely in your decision on what you've heard in the courtroom?
Yes, I can do that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you'll remain seated for just a moment, and counsel approach when you're ready.
I-44 the present.
Please be seated. Good afternoon, sir. You're going to continue to be called Juror I-44, and the attorneys are going to have an opportunity to ask you questions about the questionnaire that you filled out last Tuesday. And we're going to begin with Mr. De La Rianda. You may.
Please support. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We're going to be asking you questions just limited to your exposure to the media, what you remember, and that kind of stuff. Let me start off with one of the questions you asked. That was asked of you in the questionnaire. You stated you had not formed an opinion as to the defendant's guilt or innocence. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that would still be accurate today?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know when you filled this out, you've had time to think about it some more, and that would still be true.
Yes.
Okay. I want to go over what you remember reading or watching on TV about the case. And let me start off with your exposure to whatever media there was about the case. Was that national or local or both?
Typically, I get my my media sources from the internet.
Okay.
I just don't find much credibility in what I see on the TV with regards to this.
On the internet, are there particular sites you go to get your source of information?
Yeah, there's a few.
And do you recall what they are?
Sure, CNN,
Okay.
MSNBC.
Okay. Now, in addition to just reporting straight news, do they also sometimes give opinions about one way or the other about things?
They do, however, I don't take much value in that.
Okay. So I start off, I guess the question I would ask is, you would agree that the media, do you believe the media has a slant one way or the other?
Of course, yes.
Okay, all right. So you can separate all that stuff and just make your decision on what actually happens in the courtroom?
That's exactly it, yes.
Would that be true?
Yes.
Okay. In other words, whatever exposure you've had from the media, you agree that under the law that has to be kept outside the courtroom and you cannot let it in any way weigh in your decision?
That is correct. As I said, I don't find credibility unless it's from the courtroom.
So in other words, if you were to recall something, if you're sitting as a juror and you recalled something and it was different than what the witness said, you would have to rely on what the witness said as opposed to what you recall on TV or from the internet?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any issue about being able to do that?
No.
Okay. Did you have any discussions with any family or friends about this case?
After telling them it was my 6th day on the jury, a lot of them tried, but
No, and I apologize, that wasn't a trick question. We know you're abiding by the court's instructions, but I appreciate you saying that. I meant, and I wasn't clear in what I asked. My question is, prior to finding out you were going to be on the jury, going back to last year, have you had discussions, or did you have discussions with family or friends about the case?
Some.
Okay.
Limited.
And did you express an opinion about the case to any family members or friends?
The only opinion that I expressed was that, gosh, how long is the media going to, avalanche us with this, and for how long,
Okay. So in terms you felt it was an overexposure by the media, I guess?
Once again, yes.
Okay, all right. How about with people at work, any discussions about the case with people at work? And I'm talking pre you finding out you were a juror.
Yes. I'm a manager for my store.
And we know where it is, so you don't have to tell us where it is.
Yes. Thank you. And that's my policy is if it's not work related, it doesn't belong in the workplace. So that I follow that as well.
Okay. So let's talk about what you recall about the case. What do you remember about the case? And I know you've notated some things here already that we've had an opportunity to read. Other than what you've notated here, you mentioned that you had heard of George Zimmerman, you've heard of Trayvon Martin, and you mentioned he is a man on trial for a murder charge. He made calls from jail that have been scrutinized in local media for their hidden and coded nature.
That is correct.
All right. Anything else you can recall other than what you've noted here?
The only things I can recall is a story sensationalized about the Skittle Company,
Okay.
which I found very irrelevant and,
Okay.
and I ignored.
Tell me about that. Skittle Company.
I guess he had Skittles in his hands that night, and I
Who
guess
being who?
the Trayvon
Okay,
Martin.
okay.
He had Skittles, and I guess then the Skittles company wanted to somehow capitalize on that.
Oh, okay.
That's
All
as
right.
far as the extent
You
is.
didn't think that was a good thing?
I thought this is shameless, and
Okay.
once again, it's
Sure.
just consumerism.
Sure. Anything else you can recall about the facts about what happened, how Mr. Martin ended up dead?
I mean, I know he was wearing a hoodie,
Okay.
and I know it was raining that night.
Sure.
That's
Anything else you can recall in terms of leading up to, as you described, he's a man on trial for a murder charge regarding Mr. Zimmerman being charged with murder? Anything you recall related to that?
the only thing I can recall is that, if I'm not mistaken, he turned himself in. He went down for questioning, and at a later time, that's when
Okay.
they took him in.
Any significance that you paid to any of that you told us so far?
None.
All right. If you recall something, as you've notated already, or if you're sitting as a jury, you recall something, and it's different than what comes out of the witness stand, would you rely on what comes out of the witness stand or what you recall?
Witness stand.
Okay. How about if you recall something, but it never comes out in the trial? In other words, you never hear it. Can you agree to completely disregard what you recall?
I would find it irrelevant. Yes,
Okay.
I'd disregard it.
Now, do you recall seeing any photographs related to this case?
No.
Okay. How about if there were any recordings of any type related to this case?
As I said, the only recording I was aware of was the one that was played on the radio, as a matter of fact. And
Well, do you remember what that recording was of?
they slowed it down. They put some audio music to it to make it comical.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
And so, I mean, there was a lot of laughter on there. All I know is how much fun they seemed to get out of making fun of it. I didn't really pay much mind to the
You
content.
didn't find that was appropriate or? Okay.
I just listen to them to make me laugh, and I don't find any other credibility other than that in them.
Do you remember any other recording of any type or any commentary? Let me before I ask you a compound question. Any other recordings of any time do you remember?
I recall hearing snippets of a 911 call.
Okay. Any significance to that at all? Do you remember what the 911 call was about?
I recall some banter between Mr. Zimmerman and the 911 operator. But
Do you
again,
remember
I
anything
don't, I
of
don't.
what was said between either the 911 operator and Mr. Zimmerman?
I believe I recall the operators, saying, we're on our way, we're on our way.
Okay.
No.
Anything other than that?
Other than that,
Okay. And you mentioned in your notation here on the form, the questionnaire, that he made calls from jail that have been scrutinized. Did you actually listen to calls, or was that just, and I'm not saying that, or did you actually hear that they, or report that there was calls made?
that was only pertaining to the audio played on the radio with which
Okay.
they distorted the sound and played music and,
Oh, okay.
and did it in jest. I never paid attention to it in its original or clear form, I guess, if that helps.
Any other aspect of the case that you recall, either the case itself or anything that happened in terms of news conferences or other type of things associated with the case?
I live in Lake Mary, so I was aware of the traffic jams, I guess, when there were some protests taking place, but I didn't attend the protests. I didn't pay much mind to them.
And did you feel that that was improper in terms of your label or description of protest, or did you think that was improper or proper, or you just didn't?
As Americans, we have the right to,
Free
peaceful
speech.
protest, so, but
You didn't place any significance one way or the other?
other than it drastically elongated my time to get home to see my family after
Sure.
work, no.
Would that interfere with you being able to sit as a juror if you felt those protests or free speech was directed one way or the other?
Not at all.
Would you hold that against one side or the other?
No.
Okay. Anything else that you can recall about the case that stood out in your mind?
No, I'm afraid not.
Sure, that's all right. If assuming you weren't on the jury, and assuming a close friend of yours came from out of town, let's assume they were in a country where they had no knowledge of this case.
Sure.
And they came in, and you were allowed to talk about it because you weren't on the jury, and they told you, what's going on in Sanford, in June, and what's going on here? What is this case about? What would you tell them?
Well, other than, hey, let's wait and find out, I'd basically fill them in on, there was a shooting, and essentially there's going to be a hearing, and they're going to find out, what happened.
And if that friend was really curious and said, shooting, what was the shooting about? What would you tell them?
I'd say let me direct you to any one of the numerous media sources. Feel free to take your pick. It's a needle in a haystack.
Sure, okay. As best you can recall from the exposure you had, did you form an opinion, not the ultimate opinion in terms, I know you stated you have not formed an opinion as to guilt or innocence. Did you, based on the media, did they express any facts more about other than it was a shooting, what it was related to or anything like that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Sure, and I apologize. I was trying to ask you a question without feeding you the answer.
Sure.
So we're not allowed to give you information and say, oh, by the way, you didn't hear about this. Do you remember any more detail in this media recounts or about the shooting other than it was a shooting? Do you remember anything about more what led up to the shooing or circumstances related to the shooting?
Other than what I mentioned about it being a
Okay.
rainy night, hoodie,
Okay.
I don't recall anything else on that.
Sure. And I gather, as you realize by this time that we ask people to serve as jurors, we ask them to take time from their lives and jobs, et cetera. We know it's an inconvenience. And we know that a lot of people, in terms of having to take time, it's a hardship, but not an insurmountable hardship. My question is, the judges, we are estimating as best we can that the jury process, once we pick a jury, the trial itself may last anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And we also, the court has made a decision, because we don't want the jury to be exposed in terms of contact from the media, that the jury will be sequestered. So
Okay.
your contact with outsiders, family, et cetera, will be severely limited.
Okay.
Do you understand that? And I gather by your answer that even though that may be something that would not be ideal, it would not be an insurmountable hardship, is that correct?
That is correct. It would not be ideal, but far from insurmountable.
Okay. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Mara.
Afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good, my name is Mark Romero. I represent George Zimmerman, who's sitting in the middle, Don West, on the far side is my co-counsel, Robert Hirschhorn, is helping out on this stage. And has it sort of become apparent to you what we're doing right now, which is just to find out what we call pretrial publicity, basically just what information you know about the case as you come into the courtroom. So any of my questions are going to sort of be focused on that, as will Mr. DeLeon's, okay?
Understood.
And it sounds as though you come to us with a healthy skepticism about media. Would that be accurate?
Yes, if I may explain. I'm
Sure.
a father of three, and in my opinion, the news is all negative. And we're a blended family, and so anything that I can do to keep the negativity out of the house, I'm up for. And I just feel that constant exposure to this negativity that the media feeds, through the television and radio and what have you, it's just not a way to build a family, and I choose not to allow it in the home.
Okay. Are the children of age where you can talk to them about the exposure they may have and the same concerns with the media?
Certainly, the 10, 12, my youngest is under 1 your age, so not yet.
And to the extent that you've heard about this case, I think you've explained it in response to some questions, which is some along the way, initially a bit more in the beginning when it sort of hit, or?
Could you repeat that again? Sorry.
Sure. Did you hear, I thought, and I might be wrong, that you had said that you had heard about this case when it first happened, and you heard about it more back then and sort of got over it or past it after the initial, I think you said, avalanche.
Correct. That's absolutely correct, yes.
Okay. Back then, if you could just give me a little bit more insight as to when it first came across to you. Say, what was the first thing that you heard about this case when you first heard about it?
I'll do my best. I believe I was watching, just one of the TV shows that we like, that we frequent, and then we saw, breaking news, from one of the local sources. Well, when I saw that, I said, well, let's see what else is on. And it appeared as though it was on every channel. So we took a moment, took in what we could, and says, all right, well, looks like there's going to be another drawn-out case the local media is going to absolutely hit us with, so I'm just going to put on something different. Other than that, as I said, I do check CNN, and the only thing that I can recall is they put up a computer-generated, what might have happened. Also, of which I don't take much stock in.
Okay. Was that a computer animation?
It was like an animation,
Okay.
yeah. So.
Do you recall what that animation, what it presented?
Gosh, they showed images of, of a rainy night. They showed images of the 911 operator speaking on the phone, and then, Mr. Zimmerman on the phone, and, they showed, streets, but,
Okay.
I can't recall, or at that time, really, did I find any of that relevant. I wasn't very taken by the cases most of my other peers have.
Okay. Do you recall the perspective that animation gave on how the interaction between the two, George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, actually occurred that led to the shooting?
Between Trayvon Martin and Mr. Zimmerman?
Is that animation? Yes.
I didn't finish watching the animation because I just felt that this was, what credibility does this have? But I do recall the animation showing that, it showed Mr. Zimmerman's character coming from behind and approaching, and at that point it said, this is what we believe to have happened. At that point, their credibility in my eyes is next to nothing, and I don't have time to waste on that.
And it sounds like the answer to this question is obvious, but certainly if what you heard, if you were sitting on the jury, you would listen to witnesses from the witness stand and see evidence presented. If that was inconsistent with this animation, this cartoon, which would you pay attention to?
I would certainly go with what's on the witness.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess the concern that we really try to address is those subtleties that happen from the media, whether it's over time or something as precise as a cartoon, whether or not that would have some effect on you and how you look at the case. So whether or not you have some bias or prejudice that you walk into the courtroom with based upon your media exposure.
I guess no, because what I mean by I guess is that so many of my friends are, very tied up into things like this, past very hyped cases, OJ, what have you, and I see what it does to their lives, and it just consumes them, and that's the last thing I want for myself, for my family. So I just choose not to follow that. I'm a sports nut, to be honest, and if it's not about football, then I really don't have much interest. Sorry.
Well, how about those conversations with those friends who have taken a position on this case? Tell me about that.
Maybe I have 6 that say one way, a half dozen that say the other, and I just, you know what, I really don't have time to waste on this conversation, so.
Okay. Is it, are you sort of the ilk that were you to sit on this jury, make a decision, sounds like it's going to controvert or conflict with at least 6 of your friends'
Sure.
predispositions. Any concern that you would have with acknowledging your verdict and still moving forward with your friends, general public, anything?
I wouldn't have a problem with that. As I said, I don't put a lot of stock into these media hyped cases as they do, and well, if that's something to lose a friend over, something like this, then so be it. I just don't have time for that.
From what you've heard and seen in the media, have you noticed sort of a social or political pressure that's been placed on this case?
So, certainly. It's a very high-profile case. It seems that it's got the attention of quite a lot of different people of varying opinions, and that's my opinion on the matter.
Tell me what you think those pressures are.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of folks are probably saying, you should go this way, and then a lot of other folks are saying, well, no, you should go the other way. And to be frank, everyone has an opinion, and they all stink. So, well, what does that matter to me?
I guess the only reason why it might matter to us is if you were to allow those pressures, whatever they are, that are outside the courtroom to affect how you would act inside the courtroom, particularly with how you would reach your verdict.
I think as a father, I can say that, I've always taught my children that, you do what you believe in, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. At the end of the day, you're the person that, you need to answer to, and, and anyone else, higher power that you believe in, and that's it. No one else matters, and I live by that.
You're going to bring that philosophy to our jury?
If I'm called to do so, yes.
Thanks. No further questions, Ron. I appreciate the time.
You'll just remain seated for one moment. Counsel, when you're ready, approach. In regards to juror I-44, any strikes for cause by the state, by the defense?
No, thank you.
Okay, where that leaves us is with R-40, I believe, am I correct? What I would like to do before I really Mr. Zimmerman, again, I'm going to ask you, you've been here today, and you've had an opportunity previously to look at the juror questionnaires, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you heard the individual examination of the potential jurors today?
Yes, Your Honor.
And did you have an opportunity to talk to your attorneys about their decisions that they made on these prospective jurors?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you in agreement with that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. The other thing is, and this is for both sides, counsel for both sides have agreed that when we got to 40 prospective jurors, that we would begin our regular voir dire examination. And we have those 40, and I'm going to list them to make sure that these are 40 people that are acceptable to you for the pre-qualification. okay?
Yes, sir.
May I have a moment?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, state ready, because I'm going to ask if this is acceptable to the state also. Juror B12, B29, B76, B7, B35, B37, B51, B86, E6, E40, E54, E73, M75, B61, B72, E22, E13, E28, K80, K95, P67, that's P as in Paul, G14, G29, G47, G63, G66, G81, H6, H7, H18, H29, H35, H81, H69, H86, I5, I19, I24, I33, and I44. Is that acceptable to the state?
It is, Your Honor, subject to the court's rulings, obviously, regarding this. Yes, it is.
Okay, is this acceptable to the defense?
I may have written down I-14 instead of I-19. I just want to confirm that if I might. I-19. Sorry, I-19.
I-19?
Yes.
And that's
It's my
what I
mistake,
said?
not yours,
Okay.
sorry.
Is that acceptable to the defense?
Yes, we of course had made some argument at the bench, and those are reserved, but short of that, yes.
Okay, acceptable to you with those caveat by Mr. O'Mara?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Okay, can we bring in the ones that we had accepted today? And we'll first bring in the three that you have in the back. I'm going to is it okay to dismiss them?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, bring them and I'll dismiss them.
On I-46, I-49, I-54, present.
Please be seated. I bet you think I'm going to tell you have to come back tomorrow. I'm not. To let you know that you are hereby excused from your jury summons and jury service, but I wanted to thank you on behalf of all the participants in the court for your incredible patience during this process. Without your willingness to sit here and wait for the process to begin, we would not be able to do our job. So I want to thank you very much. You are hereby dismissed. Deputies will help you out. Thank you. And then can I get the others in, Bobby?
Jurors are present, Your Honor.
Please be seated, and I'm just going to make sure I have everybody here that I expect. So if I call your juror number, please raise your hand. H81, H69, H86, I5, I19, I24, I33, and I44. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin what we call our regular jury selection tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So you will need to be here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. At that time, if you counted, you could see there's 30 seats in the box. We're going to put 30 of you in the box here, and the attorneys are going to begin what we call our regular voir dire or jury selection process. So if you'll be here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the deputies will tell you where they would like you to meet. Of course, I'm going to give you my instructions, and I'm going to ask if you will agree to abide by them. During the overnight recess, you are not to read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. Do I have your assurances that you will abide by those instructions? You're not to discuss the case amongst yourselves nor with anybody else. That includes people at home, friends, family, co-workers, or anybody at all. If they try to talk to you about the case, please tell them that you cannot and ask them to leave. If they insist, please report it to the court deputy. Do I have your assurance that you'll abide by these instructions? You're not to use any type of electronic device to get on the internet to do any independent research about the case, people, places, things, terminology. Do I have your assurances that you will abide by those instructions? And you're not to read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case. Do I have your assurance that you will abide by those instructions? And with that, you're excused for the evening. Follow Deputy Jarvis. We'll see you at 9 a.m. Please be seated. Mr. West, last night when we were recessing, you had indicated that there were some exhibits that you, a housekeeping matter, wanted to have entered. Do you want to wait until tomorrow, or are you prepared to, did you show some of them to Mr. Manti? I had asked you if you would show them to him and we could go over that today, or you're not prepared to do that right now? Okay, we could do that. That's fine. It was a late night last night. We could do that tomorrow. Is there anything else that we need to take up before we recess for the day?
I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing for the next couple of days as well. Maybe, I don't know if that's a conversation we can have at the bench or just something, I'm just trying to see where we are. Today's Tuesday, we're doing some general tomorrow, we have Fry tomorrow.
At 4 o'clock at Fry.
We might have, I don't know what, I'm just trying to see where we're going.
Okay, the court's intention, like I told these prospective jurors, is to begin the regular voir dire tomorrow. The 30 people will be put in the box and we'll begin our regular voir dire. We'll see where that goes. No matter where we are at that time, we will break about 3:45, so we could get ready for the next witness in the Fry hearing. And then if we need to continue with jury selection on Thursday, we will do that. Was there something else that, is that? Yes, you may approach. Thank you, Susan. Court is in recess until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.